In addition to learning about the imports and exports of your application itself, there's also a utility that allows you to import and export your business rules. And we'll just take a quick look at that. It's a separate utility, and it's called the Business Rules Engine Deployment Wizard. So it's your typical wizard format here. We're going to click Next, and then let's say you want to export one of your business rules. You click Export, click Next, and you give it the name of your database and then the name of your business rule database. So this is your server where you're running your SQL, and then this is the name of your business rule database. If you can actually pick from all your databases, but it's by default going to have the right one there. Then you're going to pick your policies and or vocabularies, which is two different exports. So right here, if you pull down this box, you'll see a list of all your policies, and this is our current version, PO Trace Policy 1.2. And then here you're going to browse to the disk and give it a file name. So earlier in a prior demo, we created this deploy directory. So I can put here deploy, and I could call it biz rule PO Trace Policy 1. I don't know if you want to call it 1.2 or 1_2 XML. Then click Next. And this is actually the syntax. If you wanted to, you could actually run this from the command prompt, and you could actually type in all this nice syntax right here. And then click Next. And then it says 0 errors, Next. And if you want to export another policy, you can just check this box and the wizard will start over. Otherwise, if you click Finish, the wizard will end. And so now you can see here, we actually have two exports of the policy. One was because a while ago when we ran the full wizard, the MSI wizard, it actually exported the policy as well. And then let's just show you real quick what this file looks like. There might be a time or two where you might need to edit this as well, because if you put configuration parameters in your business rules, then your configuration parameters on test and production might actually be different. So like we did a look for C colon before, and you can see here, well, that's actually just a schema. Okay, so here's an example of the path from my trace directory. So on my production system, I may not want to use C colon BizTalk demos, or that directory may not exist. So I might have to come edit this file and then change it, save it to disk before I take it to production. Now if you do that, you can then turn around and run the wizard again, and now you can say import, and basically you're reading the XML files, and once again you give it the name of the SQL server and the database. Then you point to the disk where your file is, which would be your file here, and click Next, and now it's going to do an import instead of an export. Click, and it says of course it already exists, so it's not going to run. The other thing you can do with this wizard is you can actually deploy and undeploy. So like after you've got your policy there, let me just show you what we're going to do here. We're going to go to the business rule engine here and see it's deployed, so I'm going to undeploy it. I'm going to right click undeploy. Let's actually just delete it. Okay, so let's hit delete. So it's gone. Now let's import it again. Okay, next. And now we got 0 errors. And now I want to run the wizard again, because even though I restored it and imported it, I did not deploy it. So the second time we run the wizard, we'll say deploy policy, and then we pick the policy, and it gives you a list basically of all the undeployed ones here. You click it, and then this is the syntax it would be using, and then click. We already clicked Next, it already ran, 0 errors, and now we're done. Now if we go back to here and click the refresh button, you can see the policy has been restored and it has been deployed. Now just to prove to you that you could run this from the DOS command prompt, and the reason for this is you might want to write your own scripts to do deploy and undeploy. So let me open a command prompt here. And actually, this is another one of those Microsoft I gotchas, okay? They actually provide a deploy utility for regular deploys, but not for the business rule engine. So the only way you can run this business rule engine program is to run it interactively on the screen. They do have this program here called BTS deploy, and you can, by typing it in, you can see what the commands are. And the way you can get the syntax for this is actually just go back to one of your projects in Visual Studio, and let's take a look at one of those. So when you right-click your solution and do a deploy here, what we can do is actually capture the syntax of the deploy and then use it as a model to run from the DOS command prompt. Okay, so now we can go to the output window, view output, and if you scroll back you can actually see the deploy commands that were run here. So we need a bigger screen for this. So notice here it says VS, Visual Studio Deploy, and then it says application name, assembly, and so on. Okay, so we should be able to take most of this line here, except the period at the end. And we should be able to go here and type in BTS deploy and then paste the rest of that line, except for the period on the end, and hit enter. Okay, the one thing I didn't do is, even though I typed in BTS deploy, there are then 4 commands: deploy, remove, import, and export. So I didn't type in the word deploy. So I'm going to do it again, and right here, after the word, I've got to move my little cursor up there. After the exe program BTS deploy, I then have to type in the word deploy. Still have a problem here. So that saying the word application name is not allowed. Okay, so this is actually slightly a different utility. So here we're going to get rid of the application name. Okay, sorry. So instead of doing it that way, let's just try this all again here. Let's just look at the commands. BTS deploy. And let's build a little .bat file then that we can use with this. Okay, so what I want to do is copy this syntax from here. And I go to Notepad or whatever your favorite editor is. Mine's Edit Plus. And now I can fill in all these little blanks. Let's actually do an export. I think that would be more logical here. So let's find Mark. Okay, so notice these parameters are actually optional, so let's try to leave them off. And then we say assembly name. Now notice here you have an OR. So you can either give the assembly path name, or you can give these 4 elements, which are like what you'd see in the GAC, the assembly name, assembly version, culture, and public key token. So since there's an OR, what I want to do is take off the OR and just give the path name. So what is the thing that I want to export? So here's a library of some of the demos we've been doing in these videos. And let's suppose I want to export just the PO schemas. So I would go to the assembly on the disk, which would be development, and I would get this DLL name, and we will put it right here. So that's the path on the disk where the DLL is. And now I give it a path for my binding name. So over here we have a thing called binding files. So let's use that directory name, and we'll paste it right here. Except we need a file name. So we'll call this demo PO schemas manual export.xml. And then again, the log path name is optional, so I want it to just default that. So now we have this command. Now it all needs to be, I think, on one line here. And that little parentheses needs to go away. The parentheses was part of the OR. And now we put in here BTS deploy. So this is like your exe program name, and then there's 4 commands within that: export, import, remove, and what was the other one? Deploy, remove, import, and export. So remove is the opposite of deploy, and of course import and export are opposite of each other. So now I'm going to save this as export my schemas dot command. Okay. Now here I need to go to this directory on my hard disk, dir star.command. Wait a minute, something's wrong here. Okay. I got to be in the deploy directory. Then I got to go to the binding files. Now, star.command. Now, there's a good chance when I run this, my BizTalk library is not going to be in the path. Okay, actually, I guess it was. Okay, so if you get an error here, you need to check your path to see, if you have C:BizTalk program files, etc. in your path. If you don't, you either have to add it to your path, or what you can do is, of course, here you can specify C:program files, BizTalk, whatever it is, and then put the BTS deploy, or you can just go to that directory and run it from there. So here you can basically see now we ran the deploy command manually, and what we actually did was exported a file, and then we can go look at the file that got exported, which is called right here, demo PO schemas manual export. And then if we browse that file here, you can see everything there is to know about a schema. So there are times where if you want to do your own kind of manual deploys, this is how you would do it. You can basically export, import your binding files using a command prompt syntax.